Greetings, friends. Today, I have a piece of advice for you, and it's all around naming a product. Because isn't it fun when you have a product idea or you've got a service idea, you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, to start thinking about product names? I think that's really important for you to start thinking about right away, because what's really important, and a piece of advice, is to get it right the first time. Just like if you're naming a kid. Make sure you think the name of the kid is going to last a lifetime. You're going to be happy with it because you're going to be stuck with that name for a long time as a parent, or the kid will be stuck with that name. So there's lots of funky names out there. People get creative and it's all really well and good. Or maybe people like traditional names for their kids. Keep in mind that product naming is very similar. My advice to you is to do the legwork and get it right the first time, and think about the long-term ramifications of the name that you're going to have for your company, your product, or your service. So let's talk about product naming. Product naming is something that you're going to need to do early on in the product development process, probably before we get into brand identity and all of that. And the reason is you have to do your due diligence early because names are hard. A lot of the great names are taken. And as you know, you're going to have a name with your URL for your website. You need to go through the trademark process. So I encourage you to not allow yourself to fall in love with a particular name because it's going to have to be unique enough in your category that it isn't taken. You also need to make sure that your name makes intuitive sense. And like I said, if you're going to pick a crazy name, make sure that it's not offensive to anyone, that it will stand the test of time. So there's 6 steps that I typically use in a naming process. And the steps include developing a list of a bunch of different names from a bunch of different sources. Once you have those names, then try to determine those most promising ideas. Make a short list. Once you have your short list, then play with the name in a number of different contexts, because what you think might be appropriate in another context or culture may not be. So you're going to research anything you can that may potentially be offensive to somebody in that name. Search for an available URL, and then complete a trademark search, and then apply for that mark. So it's a 6-step process. And what I am going to talk about next is the types of products naming. So you can name your product whatever you want, but we sort of put things into typology to help guide you in a certain way. So there's descriptive names. I love descriptive names for products because I think it helps a consumer cognitively understand what it is you're trying to sell. And basically a descriptive name it explains what the item does. So, for example, Nest Learning Thermostat was the name of a smart thermostat that Google Nest had created back in my Internet of Things day. I was the competitor at Honeywell, but they called it the Nest Learning Thermostat. Ours was called Lyric at the time, which wasn't a descriptive name. It was a suggestive, associative, or metaphorical name. So anyways, a Nest Learning Thermostat tells you exactly what the product does. Another type of way you can name a product is associative or suggestive names. So the product would be what it might do without telling you exactly what it is. So for example, you can think of like Microsoft Office. So Microsoft Suite of software services is like your office within the computer. So it doesn't tell you exactly what each of those pieces of software does, but it alludes you to thinking that you're going to get the tools that you need to run an office. Now, metaphorical is an arbitrary name in a real world that really has an emotional connection to the product, but doesn't at all describe it in any way. For example, Apple is a metaphor. And it's connected to the technology field by Isaac Newton as the Apple Epiphany. However, there's no direct link between Apple and a computer. Could be a metaphor, could be like Zeus. Like you're going to name your company Zeus. Maybe you're a fitness company and you want to use a metaphor for, godlike bodybuilding, etc. That would be a metaphorical name. Abstract is describing a product without drawing in existing language. For example, Kleenex. Kleenex does not exist in the dictionary, but it's something we can all associate with cleaning. It's not spelled like cleaning, but Kleenex is sort of abstract and you can kind of connect the dots. So there's typically 4 different types of product names, and I suggest that you try to brainstorm names in each of these categories. So that brings me to the name storming product naming activity that you are going to use if you're taking my class. So what you're going to do in the class is go into Canvas, download the name storming activity. I want you to think and brainstorm independently about different types of names. Descriptive, metaphorical, abstract. And then I want you to bring all of those ideas together and type them in the grid that I have on the activity sheet. I also want you to think of bringing different words together based on real words, constructed, invented, misspelled, acronyms, etc. So you are going to work on this product naming activity and come up with a short list of names that you really like. Once you have gotten that short list of names, then we are going to walk through the trademark process. So get your list of names first before we go on to this next step. Now the trademark process is grabbing your short list, and then you are going to go to GoDaddy or some other website URL finder, and you're going to search your names in GoDaddy. And once you do that, you can see, is the URL available? Do you want to play with, a .com, a .gov, a .net? Do you want to put other forms of the word in there? Try to figure out if your actual URL is available. If it is, you're going to have to snatch that up as quickly as possible if you can afford it. But prior to doing this, you kind of have to do this all in one really fast, simple step. You're going to then go to the USPTO trademark search. So it's uspto.gov/trademarks/search. You are going to take that name and you are going to search on it. And the trademark search will tell you whether or not in your category there is a company with that registered trademark. If it is trademarked, I suggest move on to the next one on your list and try to find a good name that has the feasibility to be trademarked. So there's a couple of different ways you can go about trademarking. One is the word mark, and I suggest if the word mark is available, you get that trademarked. You apply for that mark to be trademarked. If it is not available, you could potentially take your logo and attempt to get that image trademarked. If you have both a word mark and a logo and they are open, get them both trademarked. It costs $750 for each mark application. So this is not an inexpensive process. I also suggest you can do it one of two ways. You can do the research process on your own, Try to come up with a name, and then hire an intellectual property attorney to help you with this process, or you can do it on your own. There's no reason why you have to hire an attorney. However, if you're going to incorporate your company and you're going to set up your the management rules of your company and your partners, etc., it's best to just have one attorney go through and help you with this entire process. But this is not an inexpensive proposition. I will tell you, it's going to cost you some money to get your business incorporated, your trademarks, whether they're going to be a go or a no-go. It's going to cost you some money to do this. And then generally the wait for the approval is about 6 months or so. So this is super important before you fall in love with a name, to go through this trademark process to make sure that the name is what you want. So backing up, remember these 3 things. Do your due diligence early. You get a name you love, start looking it up. Start researching it. Is a URL available? Is a trademark available? Ensure that the names make intuitive sense. Are you just picking some random name, and will a consumer, you're going to have to work a little bit harder for the consumer to be able to connect those dots. It's okay to do that, but just remember that it's going to be a little bit more work for you in terms of promotion to connect those dots. And make sure that you go through and understand the meanings of those names in a number of different contexts and a number of different cultures, to make sure that you're not offending anybody, because you're just going to have to go back to the drawing board, or you might just lose out because you've inadvertently not done the research. And then finally, make sure that it stands the test of time. So do the activity if you're in my class. If you want more information on product naming, feel free to reach out to me directly. Take care.